Well, hello, everyone. It's John Lockland here. I'm the director of Forum for Democracy International and delighted to welcome to this week's forum, together with my co-host Peter Lavelle from Moscow, Pascal Lottaz, who joins us from Kyoto in Japan, where he is assistant professor of neutrality studies and where he also operates the video podcast Neutrality Studies. I'm immensely honored to have you, Pascal, also because you very recently had as your guest, our own previous guest, Saeed Mohammed Morandi, who has become something of a superstar. He comes on podcasts like ours, but is also, as you know, on very mainstream Western media and has been talked about a lot. And I suppose Iran is a good place to start. How do neutrality studies view this terrible sequence of events which seems to be unfolding and which may indeed, some people say, will unfold today on Thursday, the 18th of June? Pascal.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the invitation, first of all. And I cannot speak for my podcast is called Neutrality Studies, but I'm also working on an academic project, Neutrality Studies, in which I try to build up a network of researchers that systematically investigate the involvement of third parties in international conflicts, and look at neutrality in like a broad facet of things. I cannot speak for that group of people, but for the way that I look at this as the host of my YouTube show, I look at it as an absolute horrific escalation of a Middle East fire that was already raging basically because of Israel's actions around its neighborhood and the United States action in that area. And we've seen over the years so many interventions, so many countries in West Asia being regime changed and overthrown, and Syria collapsing, and civil wars, and the invasion of Lebanon, and of course the genocide against the Palestinians. I just before this talk, I talked to a professor in occupied Bethlehem in the West Bank, and it's desperate. People, the situation of the Palestinians is utterly desperate, and this is all supported by of course, by the United States, and it's supported by the Europeans. Friedrich Merz, who said that, I'm glad that the Israelis are doing the dirty work for us. It's disgusting. This is a disgusting way of thinking. And now an attack against Iran to take out an evil regime. The Europeans and North Americans are not able to think outside the category of good and evil, and you're either in the one or in the other. And once you're distributed, it's utterly clear what you do. It's insane. I
think that their problem is deeper. I would say I was very struck by a tweet from. There's a particularly stupid congressman called Joe Wilson, who tweeted this morning or last night, "Let's put an end to Russia's forever war against the world." And you just think, what kind of psychological problems can you have to tweet that as the United States is about to start yet another of its forever wars against the world? Or again, the French Foreign Minister, Jean-Noël Barrot, I'm speaking to you from Paris, who tweeted his outrage at a drone attack, a Russian drone attack in Kiev, on the very day when yet another 50 or 60 Palestinians were killed in Gaza. But he wasn't outraged by that. And you just wonder, of course, you're right that the good and evil paradigm, the thing that's been going on now for decades. But in a way, I think it's getting worse. This inability, this psychopathic inability to see oneself and to understand how oneself might be perceived by others. Sorry, Pascal, go ahead.
Yes, no, I absolutely agree. It's not just one explanatory variable that we can use in order to understand this psychopathy, but and it's also a systematic issue, right? It's the way that information is filtered in the West, and the way that then the different institutions, including the military-industrial complex, interact with the political system, and it's a huge problem, and we can take it apart. But one issue that we see time and again is this propensity to project, right? The Europeans, the North Americans, the Israelis project all of what they're doing into the others, and then 10x it, right, and say like, okay, what Israel is doing to Palestine is self-defense, but they know that this is a genocidal onslaught, but then they project that into Russia and say like Russia is committing a genocide against the Ukrainians. Look how the buildings are burning, and like this is, I mean, but we don't need to psychologize everything, but it is part of the entire problem. And the way that I see this is, of course, as just a way in which war spreads. It spreads by some of these psychopaths. It also spreads because of the reactions of the others around it. I mean, again, we wouldn't have a Iran-Israel war if Iran didn't strike back, but it is unreasonable to expect that Iran doesn't strike back. It is unreasonable to expect that Russia just sits there and waits until NATO comes and breaks them up, right? It's unreasonable, but this is part of the sociology of war. And within that sociology of war, I try to understand how third-party actors work with that, or how they interact with the system.
So when the Israelis started to attack, whatever it is now, 4 or 5 days ago, people said they'd bitten off more than they can chew, and the Iranians had plenty of missiles, and they'd hidden all their facilities underground and so on. And then Trump, as you know, 2 days ago, promised from the G7 in Canada something absolutely terrible and made this extraordinary tweet about evacuating Iran. I mean, I know we're not military experts, but what do we think that means? Is this just Trumpian bluster? Or is there really some horrific attack in preparation?
I would say probably both. It's I do think that in the planning staff of the Americans and the Israelis, you have people who do contemplate everything, including nuclear attack on Tehran, because it would be unreasonable for them not to do that, because that's just how they have been. You know, that's part and parcel of how far these people are willing to go and willing to think. On the other hand, it's probably not a done deal and a decision, because we see how a lot of decisions are made last minute, or at least they seem to be made last minute. But we also see how in the Trump administration itself, they don't speak with one voice. That's the one thing we also need to realize. It's not a hierarchy. It's not a perfect pyramid, right? Tulsi Gabbard in March actually tried to undercut this kind of Iran is about to have a nuclear weapon argument by actually testifying in front of Congress that she, as director of the intelligence services, has no indication for that. We have other people who oppose this. We also see that J.D. Vance doesn't really seem to be exactly on the same page here, although he still rhetorically supports it, but in a weaker version. So we see that these different pieces are moving, and as Andrei Martyanov keeps saying, there's no strategy. This is also, a lot of this is ad hoc, but that makes it all the more dangerous, because the other sides cannot count on the fact that there is a strategy behind.
But maybe the decision-making process is ad hoc. I would agree with you, but the end result is clear. What they want, what their goal is, very, very clear. And George and I were talking about this recently. I mean, I'm calling it now the fallacy of common sense, because how do you analyze this? It's impenetrable now, because just like what you did, you're using kind of the scientific method. We take statements, we take actions and reactions, and we've all been doing that. But here we are. I mean, it gets down to just chaos. And
I'm not sure I agree with that, Peter. I mean, I fear that unfortunately the decision has been taken. After all, Trump.
No, you're misunderstanding me. You're misunderstanding me. I agree. The decision has been made, but how we get there and how it is telegraphed to us, that's what makes it very difficult. I think the decision and the goal is very, very clear. Go ahead.
Yes, and the reason I think, the reason that we agree, I think, is that although it's happened rather quickly, the breakup with Elon Musk, and then the rude remarks about Tucker Carlson, and then the even ruder remarks about Tulsi Gabbard in the plane. I don't care what she says. Those surely indicate that he's cutting himself away from the isolationist MAGA base, no?
There's a sense also when we witness this that we've been here before. There was a certain sequence of events. I mean, if you remember the sequence of events that led to the bombing of Libya, you just knew, one by one, all the pieces are in place. And then, of course, the same sequence of events that before the bombing of Yugoslavia. And it's exactly the same thing that is now happening. I mean, Trump is preparing the public for this inevitable. That, you know, there's you know, some people are still hoping, I think, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, oh, well, maybe Trump's got some sort of a fantastic plan that we can't quite understand, and that at the last minute he's going to back away and there'll be some sort of a deal. It's not going to happen. There's not going to be a deal. The American attack on Iran will start maybe later today, tomorrow, but it's going to start really within the next few hours. I mean, it's inevitability. You've now crossed the Rubicon and there's no going back.
May I
go ahead, Pascal, please.
I agree with that. I just want to say that I don't think there's from the beginning an inevitability built into what we are seeing, because yes, the goal is clear, but had it been up to Netanyahu, this would have happened already in 2019, right, when we had the tanker crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, and we were already getting close to direct military contact, or it would have happened even earlier. I mean, Netanyahu has been advocating this since 1995, right? I mean, they wanted to do this much faster, and we know from Wesley Clark, I mean, they were thinking of doing 7 countries in 5 years. Yes. So they wanted to do it much faster. So yes, the goal of these neocons is clear, but there are moments when things can happen and when they can't. They wanted to break up Syria, but it took them 10 years, right, to get rid of.
Yeah, but they're on a roll now, aren't they? They're on a roll because they have indeed done Gaza, they've done southern Hezbollah, they've decapitated Hezbollah, they've done Syria. They're on a roll.
On a roll, yes, but they are also the Israelis are also in a deep problem, because like about a month ago they started losing the narrative game, at least with the Europeans. We've seen much more critical coverage coming out, and that's the first time in 2 years of genocide that we saw that. And those were the kernel, the beginning of some actual resistance from European publics, and that was also new. I also interpret at least part of the action of them coming now as an attempt at overshadowing this, and also, you know, getting rid of, like, you know, the Madeleine and the flotilla, and like the attention on the Palestinians. But so I don't think it is inevitable, but I think the goal of the people is clear. And unfortunately, you know, for all they say, like, oh, we just want a stable Middle East and we want to make everybody happy. No, chaos in Iran and a civil war in Iran, and, you know, making Iran into an Afghanistan. That's what is a good outcome for Israel and for the US. And so this is
Jeremy Nell. Jerm, I know you want to jump in. Jerm, go ahead.
Hi, my apologies for my late arrival. Had an issue with my camera. I don't know if you gents are familiar with the work of Brian Berletic, geopolitical commentator.
Yeah, he's been on the forum before it was video. He's fabulous. Go ahead.
Oh, that's right. Yes. He made a very, very good analysis of this actually a number of years ago, where he pointed out the Which Path to Persia document by the Brookings Institution. Now, I've got it open in front of me on the Brookings website. And Brian noted already a couple of years ago, chapter 5, which is called Leave It to Bibi. And it basically outlines the US strategy for military strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, using Israel as a proxy. What this suggests is that it's not necessarily a Trump idea at all, and in fact was a long-standing idea going back a couple decades almost.
Pascal.
Absolutely, it is, and that's why it's a neocon project, and it's a project that has, you know, it's it's a brainchild of people, and it's being carried forward. And Brian Berletic needs to be credited very much with the argument of a continuity of agenda. So that's his main point. He says, like, whoever is in charge, the agenda continues, and he uses these kind of these documents as part of proof. Look, we have a blueprint, and the blueprint is being carried out. The point is, sometimes the blueprint takes more time, sometimes less. Sometimes you diverge, and you have many blueprints. That's the thing. You have different think tanks who have different papers, and I think Brookings. No, it's another one that also has a very much these hawkish ideas, but then they also put out ideas for how to work with the countries close to Russia as like neutral buffer states and so on. So you have different blueprints. The sad thing is, it's always the most hawkish ones that seem to win out over the others. And in that sense, I don't think it's inevitable, but it is planned.
Pascal, both of you, you are agreeing with John that Israel is on a roll. Is Israel any safer though? Is Israel's security enhanced by being on a roll?
No, I mean, they're now getting their war with Iran, and they're getting bombed, and 14, 15 Israelis have died. I mean, and 200 Iranians as well. And they're getting hammered now. So, I mean, this is part of the ridiculousness of the situation, right? Israel keeps saying the reason why it needs to exist is to protect Jews, but Jews are the most unsafe in Israel. And not just by external force. I mean, the videos I've seen of Jewish protesters getting beat up by Israeli police force. I mean, if that happened in any other country, this would be on the title page of Western media. But in Israel, it's possible to beat up Jews and put them into prison and treat them horribly. So Israel is actually a very dangerous place for the Jews. And on the opposite side, I also want to say that the Jews of Iran, 2 Jewish organizations in Iran put out statements saying like this is a war crime that Israel is committing against our country. The Jews of Iran are actually supporting the Iranians in the government in defending Iran.
Yeah, well, of course, some Israeli figures have also accused the regime of war crimes. Ehud Olmert, for example, has made this point. On the other hand, what I've been struck by since the beginning, back in 2023, is the genocidal take of former leftist figures like the Israeli president Herzog. There does seem to be a very unfortunate agreement across the political spectrum, and I'm not familiar enough with Israeli politics to know whether the coalition could break up, but I don't know if anybody else has an opinion on this, but it seems that unfortunately there is rather a lot of support for the current regime in Tel Aviv.
Pascal,
well, there's a lot of support for attacking Iran. I think that within Israel, I mean, the polls suggest that is a very popular policy, and one has to say that that's true also in Europe. I mean, Pascal was talking about the Palestinians in Gaza, and yes, there were all sorts of noises made by the British government. We're not happy about this and not happy about that, quibbling about something or other, but there's no quibbling about Iran. And there, I think Netanyahu knows that he's onto a winner in that he has the support of kind of European mainstream opinion and, of course, American mainstream opinion. But his goal, of course, and it's obvious, that is to get America into the fight, because I don't think Israel by itself is capable of accomplishing its goals. And Netanyahu figured it out that once he launches this war, once he presents the Americans with a fait accompli, then the Americans will have to come in, because the alternative is that Israel will fail and Israel will then lose, and therefore America loses, the West loses, and so on. So that's the Netanyahu calculation, looking like the calculation has paid off for him.
Pascal, you said that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just like, unfortunately, yes, it seems that Netanyahu finally gets his American war against Iran. And it's very ironic in a sense, because we know that the United States is using Ukraine to have a war with Russia, right? And now America ends up being used as a tool for war against Iran. It's just this proxy warfare. It's also, you don't know which side is really doing the proxying, but it's just terrible.
Well, Pascal, since you mentioned Ukraine, excuse me, John, I see this as very much connected. They've hit a brick wall with Ukraine. They're still looking for a strategic defeat of Russia. George and I have talked about the war on the shadow fleet. We see what's going on in the Black Sea, and I think this is all part and parcel of the same agenda. This is obviously all through my adult life, Iran is the great enemy of the United States. It's all propagandized, manufactured consent, all of that. But this is a segue also to challenge Russia because of Russia's relationship with Iran, and it's going to be tested under this under the UN Charter. Iran has the right to ask for assistance, just like Syria did in 2015, in which they got from Russia. The same thing applies to China. So I see this as a much broader gambit, because let's face it, folks, a month ago we weren't watching a war. I mean, what changed?
Yeah.
Why? And I think if you look at the broader landscape, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and of course, you do have people in the United States who also put out against these blueprints, who tell you how the United States can, should, and will win a 3-theater war. And they're talking about Europe, the Middle East, and of course, then finally the crown jewel being Taiwan and China, right? And there's maniacs who reason in this way, and unfortunately, some of them are really in the part of the top brass, including John Bolton. I mean, they sit in the highest offices, and I'm afraid the current Minister of Defense, Pete Hegseth, is also part of this, of these lunatics. Now, do they? One thing they also have in common is that they constantly overestimate the military power of the United States. And this is being tested. This will be tested now. I mean, as horrible as it is, and we shouldn't test this, not at all. It's because it's going to cause hundreds of thousands of deaths, maybe more. I mean, we see how horrible it is in Ukraine, and there we have a relatively defined trench warfare, and we have something that's basically both sides agreed, more or less, they want to contain. I mean, in various degrees, but we had it more or less in one place. But the thing with Iran, that can spill out, and even in places we don't contemplate. I had a talk with a colleague in Armenia, and he said, like, look, while everybody watches this, maybe Turkey and Azerbaijan are going to have funny ideas about now's the time to clip off that piece of land from Armenia that they need in order to connect everything. I mean, this might have knock-on effects that then make the conflict spread into places that we never thought about. And again, like the United States, if they get hammered for whatever reason, because like these ships sink. And it's not that if you hit them with a hypersonic missile, that might cause things that then might lead the United States or Israel to actually go nuclear. And this is highly, highly dangerous. So very irresponsible.
Pascal, you said something a minute ago that I didn't fully understand. I thought I heard you say that opinion in European capitals was turning against Israel. I have the opposite impression. I mentioned Jean-Noël Barrot's incredible tweet. The G7, after all, said that Israel had a right to defend itself. Ursula von der Leyen, for what it's worth, said a similar thing. I believe you're right that there is a sea change of opinion, of public opinion, but I'm precisely shocked by the incredible perseverance of European and, of course, American leaders in their support of Israel. Did I understand you correctly?
And explain that. Explain why that is the case.
Yeah.
Because all of us have access to more or less the same information. You have these elites that are just dead set in what a reified opinion, and then you have popular opinion. It's inexplicable to me.
Yeah, but this is how we need to look at it. You have elite opinion, you have popular opinion, and then you also, very importantly, have published opinion. And published opinion tends to correspond with elite opinion. Not completely, and this is where we saw a change. About a month ago, we saw some of these news outlets suddenly discovering that the Palestinians are actually suffering, and that, indiscriminate bombing is happening. And even people like Piers Morgan started suddenly go critical on Israel. That was the news. And when we had the flotilla, the Madeleine actually going to trying to reach Gaza, they were covered, much more fairly than I would have expected. And people actually talked about baby formula being on board, even on big media outlets and the BBC. And when they got then, when the Israelis raided them and in international waters took them out, actually, BBC and so on had critical reports about this, and that was new.
They started using the G word too.
They start using the G word, and you can see also some Western governments. I mean, the Irish have always been super critical, but the Spanish started using, politicians start using the G word. So I mean, you could observe how there was something changing, and especially if we use published opinion as a proxy of being torn between elite opinion and public opinion, I do think this must have worried the Israelis because they are very careful. I mean, if you see how much money they pour, millions and billions into propaganda, into manipulating European and Western American populations in order to get the unconditional support that they need to dominate their region. You know why they get jumpy at this.
But what difference does that make if this elite opinion is on board for the next Israel war? I mean, it's like, well, so now, you've accepted that what's going on in Gaza is bad. You've accepted the Iraq war was bad, but you're on board for the next war. And Piers Morgan is on board for the next war against Iran. And he's on board with signing on to every single thing that Netanyahu is claiming about Iran, and all of the Iran obsessives that Lindsey Graham, spouting forth, all the things that were said about Iraq, Piers Morgan accepts about Iran. So having said all that about Gaza and everything else, you accept the same people, the same claims, the same absolute fraudulent justifications for war. So what does it matter what they say about the last war? It's the next war that matters.
Well,
why?
I mean,
Why do
Piers Morgan is the media circus on these kinds of issues. It'll take him 20 months to come around on Iran because it took him 20 months to get around to understanding genocide. But gentlemen, what kind of echoing George, what difference does it make? Obviously, public opinion doesn't count, and they don't care. All right, and what we've seen, we saw this ridiculous campaign against anti-Semitism, particularly in the United States, but all through Europe. Okay, now you're all Ayatollah lovers. Okay, it's the same thing. Public opinion doesn't count. Democracy doesn't count. It's always it's a cover. It's just a cover to legitimize.
It's a cover.
But
my question was why. I was just wanting I was just wanting to know why. John. Why would Piers Morgan or these commentators be so partisan? Are they being paid, or are they just stupid?
No, they believe their own propaganda. It's Noam Chomsky. They wouldn't be there if they didn't, and you would have another propagandist who sits there. It's the system that takes care of that. But what I would argue is that while you are absolutely right, I mean the elites and so on try to constantly override these public opinions and so on, but they understand it's a threat, because if you surpass a certain threshold, then what happens to you is Vietnam 1970s. USA, when you have mass protests and when things are so bad that even the elites need then to shift, and you need to blame it on Nixon and so on, and you need some part to go down in order to somehow get back into the saddle. And they are very good at doing this, right? And you can see that they're scared. I mean, if they weren't scared, they wouldn't have rigged the elections in Romania. If they weren't scared, they wouldn't be talking about, outlawing the AfD in Germany, because there are possibilities in these systems, and they're bad democratic systems. They're not well-functioning democratic systems, but they still have certain mechanisms that can threaten elite interests if enough people get on board of a narrative, which is why you then need to overwrite the failing narrative with a new narrative that gives you again dominance, and thereby you keep on ruling, and then the old narrative just shifts away, fades away, people forget about it.
I absolutely agree, and what we see very, very often, like with Ukraine, there was that really big article about CIA involvement, as if this is a revelation. Wow, who knew? Okay. But what's very interesting is that we keep seeing the major news outlets trying to get the first draft of history, and they tweak it, and then they try to get it. It's a limited hangout. They give you just enough. It's like, there's a lot of excesses here. Some mistakes have been made, but the narrative is always shifting, and it's very subtle. Sometimes it's not subtle to us, but it's very subtle what they pour out. So they controlling the narrative. They don't hang on to it, as if it's their last meal. But what they'll do is they'll make a little bit of a concession. But after all, Israel has the right to defend itself. That's how you end the sentence. You end the paragraph. Yeah. You end the article. George.
Yeah. George, unmute your mic. Unmute your mic or speak in sign language, whichever you prefer. Well, while you're unmuting, go ahead, yeah.
Okay.
George.
Okay. The key is always to be prepared to justify the next war. So it's like when there came a moment around about 2005, 2006, 2007, when elite opinion decided that the Iraq war was a debacle. And but they didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So you say, okay, well, it was George W. Bush, Cheney, the neocons, the Vulcans, all these terrible people who worm their way into the Pentagon. If only we can get rid of some of these crazies, the next war will be fine. And that's what they did. And so within a few years of the Iraq debacle, already NATO is bombing Libya. Obama is bombing Libya. Obama, who had campaigned on being against stupid wars, no more stupid wars, and there he is bombing Libya. So that's what the key is. So you always want to do this, eliminate the kind of the excesses, the problems. And I think, as Pascal was saying about Vietnam, okay, you can blame this on McNamara or Nixon or Kissinger, but America's still basically on the side of good. America has a responsibility in the world to advance the cause of good. And so this is what has happened now. Okay, Gaza, it's a bit embarrassing, but Iran, they're really bad guys. We got to do something about these people. They're really, really bad. They're evil. And, this war is justifiable. You look at the media and their coverage of Iran, it's exactly the same as the coverage in the preparation for the Iraq war 20 years ago. Nothing has happened. Exactly the same people spouting exactly the same lies as they were 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I believe one thing to understand is that politics, public politics in especially Western liberal democracies, is really the art to control the current 6 weeks. The narrative of the current 6 weeks, because that's what is your power base. That's what you make decisions on. That's what allows you to do things. Anything older than 6 weeks is history, and it doesn't bite you anymore. You need to lose a major war, a world war, for something that happened in the past to bite you, and so you hang from the neck or something like that. And as long as that's not the case, the biggest lies and killing millions of people, weapons of mass destruction, the people who did that, they are celebrated, and they're invited, and they get a lot of money. And it doesn't matter that they were wrong. It doesn't matter that it had negative consequences. The only thing is this current 6 weeks, this need to be believed. So when you are about, or when you're getting close to losing narrative control, or when you see that this is a problem, then you need to shift to the next one that you can again dominate, because there's not enough information out and people are too awestruck, right, in order to kind of scramble together. And I think that's what's happening.
And what the result of that, we react to it. We're reacting to their narrative all of the time because they're leading it. And I think we do excellent critique. But unfortunately, gentlemen, I'm not sure what kind of impact we have. We're right, but so what?
Yeah, George, I'm not sure that you're. I mean, of course, I understand what you mean when you've said that nothing changes and it's all the same as back in 2003 or whatever. But surely the reality is a bit more nuanced than that. After all, the Iraq issue hung around Tony Blair's neck like a millstone for the rest of his prime ministership, and indeed after he'd left office. And then you had, of course, it was scandalous and very delayed and so on, but you did have a major inquiry which was fairly critical. And perhaps more importantly, you had the wonderful moment, was it in 2013, when the House of Commons voted against Cameron's proposal to attack Syria. And that was because of the memory of the Iraq war. Now, okay, we might say, well, they did Syria in 2024 anyway, and it was just delayed by 10 years. But surely that's a factor that and of course, again, I take on board what you say, Pascal, about 6 weeks. But in the case of the Iraq war, I think people do remember 10, 20 years later what a scandal that was. There's a lot of comment now saying, I've seen this movie before. And it did have, at least at the 2 points I've mentioned, some effect. George, you seem to have disappeared.
Yeah, but John, I agree with you. I mean, some people are held responsible for it, but here we are again. We all see the repetition. We see the strategy, and we are powerless to stop it. Okay.
Yes, I agree.
You say to Tulsi Gabbard said 2 weeks ago, I don't care what she said. Well, how do you deal with that? How do we contend with that? That's what's very frustrating. And to Jeremy's point, people like Piers Morgan. I mean, that's what's called access journalism. He's going to get people. He has access to power. He has access to influencers. That's what he's all. He has no opinion on anything. Okay, what he wants is to keep driving the news cycle, the hits,
Yes.
and all this. I mean,
but
I've been
Peter,
watching this guy for 20 years. He's an idiot. Okay,
Peter,
but he's
something.
good at what he does. It's access journalism.
Yeah, sorry to jump
John.
in, but what I was trying to ask earlier, and maybe it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but Peter, since you are in the similar business as Piers to some degree, why would Piers or others in certain media outlets take that specific position? Why would they hold a position that is, let's say, anti-Iran and or pro-Israel or something? What is it about those specific positions that become so appealing, do you think?
They're safe. They're very, very safe. Okay. And people come out of the woodwork, to protect them. Okay. Well, when Piers shifted his opinion on the genocide, his very close friends, they all turned on him. Okay. And so he's redeemed himself to be anti-Iran. How many more shows is he going to make on the genocide in Gaza? 0. He's done with that. He's moved on to what the elites, what the establishment is happy with, and he's a fanboy of the establishment and of war. And if you go across cable TV, it's always the case. Okay, I remember.
But to be fair, he opposed the Iraq war.
CNN guy told me once after Iraq, he said, "Well, all we have to do is change one letter to Iran, and then we're off to the races." CNN told me that.
Well, John, that's an interesting point, because in the run-up to the Iraq war, there was a division of opinion.
Yes.
There were big demonstrations in London, in many parts of the world. So there was at least a debate about the wisdom of that policy. There's no debate now. There's you get no opposing opinion. So in a way, it was relatively safe to oppose it before the start of the invasion. Afterwards, everybody had to get on board. There was no criticism was permitted afterwards. After you had to support the troops, you had to wish the coalition of the willing well. So, Piers Morgan is a purveyor of conventional wisdom, and so therefore it's a very easy one to attack Iran. I mean, no one's going to go and say anything positive about it. So it's an easy. And so when you see him attacking Morandi, insulting Morandi, or insulting George Galloway, he knows that this is very safe. No one's going to do anything about it. And so that's it. He's somebody who always wants to be in the mainstream of opinion, but within it, he's clever enough to be sometimes a little controversial. Oh, I'm against woke. Oh, I'm against woke. I like Trump. I like some of the things Trump does. So he's very skillful at the game.
And he invites Norman Finkelstein. It's all balance, right?
Yeah, but I think the key point. I think perhaps we should stop talking about Piers Morgan. I agree.
I want to talk about how this all ends. I'm sorry.
The key point, surely, this was made to me about 20 years ago when I used to write for the British press. I think there was someone at the Sunday Telegraph who quoted Rupert Murdoch, and after all, Piers Morgan works for Murdoch, and Murdoch apparently said to his editors, "Never forget, we are in the entertainment business." And to me, that is what Piers Morgan is.
Pascal, how do you think this is all going to end? Because I can't see Iran being a victor, though it may avoid a certain definition of defeat. Or let me ask the question differently. What does victory mean to, and defeat mean to, the United States, Israel, and Iran?
I mean, victory for Iran would definitely just be remain how it is, right, and not have a huge death toll. I mean, once the death toll climbs above a certain level, I mean, I don't think it makes sense anymore to talk of victory. Well, no, still, I mean, if they prevail, if the Iranian the government of Iran, the way that it is at the moment, prevails, and Iran as a nation remains more or less intact, then I would say that's an Iranian victory, right? For Israel, of course, if they manage to do the opposite, to regime change Iran into something. I mean, the son of the former Shah is already getting ready, right, in the US. He has been doing that sporadically. Whenever something happens in Iran, he puts out immediately a video saying, "I am ready to come back." It's like, yeah, nobody wants you, you piece of. Well, anyhow, and then and for the Americans, of course, the same. Like regime change, boots on the ground, and then controlling the oil fields. Like a large version of Iraq, right? A lot of people say like Iraq was a disaster, but to the United States, Iraq is a huge success, right? They are in total control of it. They got the oil, as Donald Trump told us in his first term, and the Iraqis still need to plead on their knees when they want to use any of the proceedings from the oil, because the money is in a New York bank account. The Iraqis are still not able to have a stable electrical grid because the US says no to any kind of investments into it. It's total colonial domination, and so if they achieve something like that. That would be the highest success. And if they
is that achievable? Is that achievable? If you want to compare it to Iraq, are you serious thinking that the administration would put boots on the ground?
Well, look, we have examples in history where the United States managed to achieve that, and I'm sitting in one of them. The US managed to have complete total surrender in Japan, right? And the Japanese kept to those surrender terms. And it was hugely successful, right? 7 years of occupation, and then you flip the former enemy into a pillar of your entire Pacific grand strategy. It's a huge success, and I don't think this is possible with Iran. I do think anyone who tries to reason in those limits is an idiot. In those terms, is an idiot. But it wouldn't be surprised if some people make that argument, because you have enough idiots who might think Iran might be like Japan, right? Let's go for that scenario. It's obviously it would be it's much more reasonable to think that even if the Americans carpet bombed and then had some sort of small militia that they managed to get in, and then boots on the ground to support them, like Afghanistan, that like in Afghanistan, you will have the resistance who just retreats to the mountains and then keeps attacking. And it took Afghanistan 20 years, but they managed to get rid of the plague, right? And something like this might happen again, but it would, of course, come at the cost of hundreds of thousands of dead Iranians and of the collapse of the Iranian social fabric, the way that it collapsed in Afghanistan. But then again, that would be success for Israel. Israel would look at that.
Could I ask, Pascal? Could I ask you? What I mean, I don't know whether you know how to answer the question. I mean, what are Iran's serious prospects? Because we really don't know about Iran's real military capabilities. How many missiles does it have? How powerful are the missiles? We've seen something, but they may be holding things back. Also, what are the chances of other countries coming in and helping Iran? Maybe North Korea, maybe Pakistan, maybe China. I mean, do you have any sense of that?
I have no good sense of it. I just have we now have a little track record of when we have to assess our own assessments about what we think of the capabilities of anti-American regimes in the Middle East. We thought Hezbollah would be a formidable enemy of Israel. Turned out not to be. We thought Hamas is still resisting now, but at this point we really need to wonder whether this is not just being kept alive in order to justify the genocide. We thought Syria, we thought Syria had an equilibrium. And when these troops came and attacked, we thought they were going to be obliterated, and it's impossible that Assad is overthrown, and then the guy was gone. So we might be doing the mistake again of thinking that actually, believing Iran's rhetoric too much. And for as much as I respect Professor Marandi, I respect him very much, but of course he would have the propensity of overstating the abilities of the Iranians, because that's part and parcel of what you do when you fight a war, right? And you need to also rally people in order to not lose hope. But On the other hand, they might have all of these missiles, and they're well away, and they are getting better now at using them. That might also be the case. It's just almost impossible at this point for external people like us to adequately judge this, judge what will happen. External support, we see now diplomatic support, right, by Pakistan, by China, by Russia. We know that for Russia losing Iran, or like having Iran like decay into chaos, would be also an existential threat to them. I mean, this would be a huge springboard for anything future actions against them. So Russia has all incentives also through the treaties that they have to support them. The question is, can you do that? I mean, system transfer and technology transfer, even military, is very difficult, which is why for 2 years Ukraine was like looking for weapons from former Soviet states, right? Because you're kind of it's called the path dependency, right? You're path dependent, and adding new weaponry is difficult. So I don't know how fast, even if China and Russia wanted to transfer weaponry, how fast that would be in practice, in practical terms, feasible without actually then having Russian and Chinese boots on the ground. And I judge that one to be unlikely.
20 years ago in Tehran, a very intelligent man said to me that the Americans always create a new crisis to cover up the existing one, the previous one that has failed. And this seems to be a paradigm example of that, the previous crisis or the current one as being Ukraine. Trump left the G7 before Zelensky arrived, which is symbolic, and Hegseth said in Congress last week or this week that the funding to Ukraine would be cut. Do we think that this latest escapade into Iran is the sign that they're moving on from Ukraine or not?
Yes, I do think so. I think the assessment also on the military level has been made that Ukraine is at this point, it's lost, at least with the political convictions of the current team and so on. So short answer, yes. Moving on from the old war.
But you could make the same argument that they have won, because it's an enormous irritant for Russia. Russia's attentions and resources that are devoted into that theater. And the thing is that Ukraine doesn't have to win. It just avoid losing, okay? And that's why it can go on for a very long time. And strategically, that is a victory for the United States, because, you know,
that's what Pascal is saying about.
I mean, if you can talk about all of the aid and all of that, but that's I hate quoting Lindsey Graham, but it's been a good investment, okay, because it's kept Russia pinned down, okay? It's a constant irritant. There's no real sight in it. I know people like to say it's going to end next month or the next 6 weeks. Last legism. We've heard this for over a year. A lot of people have embarrassed themselves by talking that way. But I think that, okay, the Russians are busy. They're irritated. We can move on. Yeah. I mean, in that way, it's how you the terminology you lose is that, have we lost Ukraine? No. Well, have we won Ukraine? No. But have we lost it? No.
I mean, they don't.
But that's
care.
what Pascal is saying about Iran. The policy in Iran is to create chaos, and so similarly in Ukraine. Go ahead, Pascal.
The moment the war starts is the moment the neocons win. The moment they pop the champagne was in February 2022 when the Russians actually crossed the border. That's the moment they won, because whatever's going to come out of it's going to be bloodshed for Russia, and they want to bleed Russia. Best case scenario, regime change, breaking up Russia, but we settle with a lower one. And at the end of the day, the Americans don't care. Just keep in mind that with what kind of fire and flame in their hearts, they fought the Vietnam War, the domino theory, and it's Hanoi, Saigon today and San Francisco tomorrow, and how they rallied, support, and killed millions of people in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in Laos, millions, and in 2023, you had Joe Biden visiting Hanoi and being super proud that he got a partnership with Vietnam. That's of course North Vietnam. It's North Vietnam. The United States made a strategic partnership agreement with North Vietnam and shook hands with the people that were fighting the Americans in the trenches. The Vietnamese, being smart and of course know that you do what you can, etc. And they're working with everybody. I mean, for them it's a very smart thing. For the Americans, it just shows that they don't give a damn. They never lost truly a war. South Vietnam lost the war, and look at where that one is today. But the United States doesn't lose wars. It just doesn't win them. But then it forgets about them because it can. It doesn't have real world impact. There's a couple of dead soldiers, a couple of widows, but those are working people. I mean, who cares?
You say that about South Korea as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
precisely.
Who's actually driving this?
The system. It's the system that's built, the way that also the United States and Europe as colonial enterprises work, and the way these different gears then interact, and the military industrial complex and the media complex, the academia that justifies it, the Europeans who push the Americans to push the others, and the Israelis who push. It's a system that's unfortunately produces mass slaughter at the other end.
I guess another way of asking that is, what do you think is the sentiment within Israel? Ignore the Israeli government.
That one, it seems pretty clear from what we get on social media. I mean, a large part of the population, I can't exactly put my finger on it, but I would put it at 70%, maybe 80, who seem to support this. I mean, and you see these videos that are made about suffering Palestinians, and they mock them. There's a video coming out today where this family of three, a mother, father, and a child, were saying bomb, 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 bomb Iran, bomb, 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 bomb. I mean, a large part of the population, they make fun of this. It's sucked up and into.
But how do we know that that's true, though? How do we know that's true, though? Because we are well aware of the fact that social media is a microcosm of reality.
True, but you have the Al Jazeera and is now compiling a list of all the soldiers they can identify who documented their own war crimes with big smiles on their faces. A lot of these materials also being used in the ICJ case and the ICC, and the statements of the leaders and so on. And you couldn't make these absolute genocidal statements if you didn't have a good part of the population behind you. So I think overall, I wish we could say it's only 20% who support this and 80% who oppose, and they're silent. But unfortunately, I think it's the opposite.
And then
Pascal,
similarly,
we're rapidly running out of time.
Could I would just want to follow up what Pascal said, is that even American presidents don't really pay any price for horrible military conflict. George W. Bush remained relatively popular. Remember, I mean, he won. I mean, what he was most unpopular for was that 2000 election, which people didn't really think he won. The Supreme Court kind of gave it to him, but he was re-elected in 2004 after the Iraq invasion, and won much more comfortably in 2004 than in 2000. Only until about 2006, 2007 did he become very unpopular, and then, of course, it was the financial crisis that really kind of sent his poll numbers, into the toilet. His legacy, he's a reviled president, but that only happened, long after he was gone. But during his presidency, he was actually relatively popular. So Trump may be calculating that, okay, I can live with Tucker Carlson's attacks, I can live with Jack Posobiec's attacks, but it's not going to be that unpopular, this war with Iran.
The people in the United States, the presidents who really live dangerous, are the ones who try to de-escalate. I mean, JFK took a bullet, and he was pro de-escalation with the Soviet Union. And look at the other people who got punished by the system heavily. It's not the warmongers. It's Julian Assange, who for 10 years was incarcerated. It's Snowden, who had to flee the country. And Ellsberg. Those are the people. I mean, the system cracks down on those who try to make it harder for the system to produce war.
Pascal, I know you have to run, but you study neutrality studies. Okay. We started our conversation about psychology. Is there a lot of psychology in neutrality studies?
No, there's a lot of history. There's a lot of international relations, and then there's a lot of conflict studies. but psychology not that much, because
Maybe
you know.
you should add that. You should add that. Make that an extra bucket.
Well, maybe we should get you on another time, Pascal, to talk, because actually we've been talking about other things, and you were going to show us some charts and so on. We'll have to put it off for another time.
That would have been a very theoretical discussion. So I think the practical discussion was way more important.
Go ahead.
Thank you, guys.
Exactly. Very good. Thanks so much from Kyoto, and thank you to my co-hosts, Peter, George, and Joan. All the best, and we'll see you next week. Bye.